everybody, I am Miss Maya and I'm going to teach you how to make a pillow today.
To make a pillow, you will need fabric, fluff, a pen, scissors, pins, needle and thread, an iron, and a sewing machine.
First, you're going to take your piece of fabric. I have one long strip of fabric, and you're going to fold it in half in a way that you want the size of your pillow. So I want my shapes to be more of this shape rather than this shape. Okay, so I'm going to take my piece of fabric, I'm going to fold it in half, and I want 2 pieces of fabric, so I'm going to cut along the fold right here. All right, so once I cut on this fold, I'm going to have 2 pieces of fabric. Now I have 2 pieces of fabric. I am now going to lay my pieces of fabric so that both right sides, this is the wrong side, I want the pretty side, the nicer side, the right side to be facing the other right side. So I'm going to create a sandwich with the pretty sides in the center. Once I have a sandwich with my pretty sides in the center, I'm going to draw the line that I want to cut to make my shape of my pillow. I'm going to decide what size I want my pillow. So I would like my pillow to be, I'm going to take my tape measure, and I would like my pillow to be 9 inches tall, and I would like my pillow to be 21 inches wide. So I'm going to create a rectangle on the bottom side, the wrong side of my fabric, and I'm going to create a rectangle that is 9 inches tall, and I'm going to draw a line that is 20 inches long, and I'm going to do that twice so I make a rectangle.
Here is my rectangle that I have drawn on my fabric.
Once I've created my rectangle, I'm going to cut 1 inch to the outside of my rectangle to give myself 1 inch of seam allowance.
Here is my hashed line around my solid line for my rectangle for my seam allowance.
Now that I've created a hash line that is 1 inch outside of my square that I want my pillow to be, I'm going to cut along my hash line, and I'm going to remember that I am keeping the 2 pieces of fabric sandwiched together as I'm cutting.
Here is my rectangle after I've cut the fabric off.
When I place a pin, I'm going to take my pin and I'm going to grab it by the end that's not sharp, and I'm going to grab the 2 pieces of fabric, and I'm going to push the pin with the sharp end through both layers of fabric, and then I'm going to come back up through both layers of fabric.
Here is my rectangle with pins all around the sides, and here is a pin of what your pin should look like to make sure that both sides are pinned together.
Once you have pinned your pieces of fabric, you're then going to bring it to your sewing machine. You're going to turn your sewing machine on, and you're going to make sure that your sewing machine is threaded through the top and that the bobbin is also threaded. We are going to sew along our solid lines that we created on our pillow and our rectangle. We're going to sew along these lines, and we're going to make sure that once we're done, we have left a 2-inch gap so that we can stuff our pillow and inside it out. So I'm going to make sure that I'm using a straight stitch, and I'm also going to back stitch when I begin. So I'm going to place my fabric in, and I am going to make sure that I'm sewing along the solid line. As I sew, I'm going to take out the pins before the sewing needle hits them, and I will stop the machine as I get to each pin. So as I move forward, I'm going to sew all the way down, and I'm going to back stitch at the beginning, and I'm going to back stitch at the end. So now that I've back stitched, I'm going to start taking out my pins, and I'm going to continue to sew along the solid line of my pillow. And I'm going to do this until I get to the very end, and I'm going to backstitch again. Once I've gotten to the end of my solid line, there are two options. I can either finish off the stitch and take out the fabric and pivot the fabric and do it again along the shorter side, or I can turn the handle that is located on the side of the machine, and I'm going to turn it until my needle goes all the way through the fabric until it's at the very bottom. I then am going to lift the foot and I'm going to twist my fabric so that I'm now going the other direction, and I'm going to place the foot back down. I want to make sure that there are no pins in the way of where I'm about to stitch. All right, so now that I have twisted my fabric so that I am now going in the other direction, I'm going to put my foot back down, and I'm going to continue to stitch down the other length of the fabric. Once I get to the end, I'm going to backstitch again. I will not be backstitching in the beginning because I just backstitched. And honestly, backstitching right now, if you're doing it this way, is not necessary. If you do take your fabric all the way out, then you would want to backstitch in the beginning and the end every time. But since I'm not going to do that, I'm just going to continue, and I'm going to continue sewing down the length, the short length of my fabric. Making sure that I stay stitching on the solid line. Now that I have completed my short line, my short length, I'm going to continue to pivot my fabric 2 more times until I get to almost to the end of my last short length. So I'm making sure that my needle is all the way through the fabric. I'm going to lift my foot up again, and I'm going to twist my fabric another time. I'm going to take out this needle that's coming up, and I will put my foot back down. All right, and I'm going to continue to do this for this long length, and then I'm going to pivot again, and I'm going to get almost to the end of the next short length. So I have made sure that I have, on my last short side, left 2 inches of space between where I started stitching and where I'm going to finish. I'm going to back stitch to finish it off, and front stitch again just a little bit, still keeping that 2 inches of fabric open so that I can inside it out and I can stuff more fluff in. So now that I've finished all my stitches, I'm going to lift up the foot. I'm going to make sure that the needle is as high as it can go, and I'm going to pull my fabric out, and I am going to cut my thread on the thread cutter that's on the side of the machine. So now I have my almost completed inside it out pillowcase that we will turn into a pillow. To inside it out, you're going to find that 2-inch opening that you have created right here. So mine is right here. I have not, these are my little 2 inches. I am now going to stick my fingers in it, and I'm going to grab a hold of the fabric, and I am going to inside it out. Okay, this may take a little bit of time, and it can be easy to use a stick to help inside it out. I have a chopstick. You're gonna find the opposite corner of the 2-inch opening that I left, and I'm going to separate my pieces of fabric, and I'm going to kind of push it in like this. Okay, I have this little inside it out little corner, and I'm going to slide my stick down until I find that 2-inch opening like right here. So now that I have gotten that, and I've taken this opposite corner, and I'm going to flip this inside out. Your chopstick will now be on the inside of your fabric, so you want to make sure that you fish that out before you start filling the fluff in. This chopstick is also a good tool to help you fill the fluff. All right, so I'm almost there. right, so now that I've gotten the inside it out, and it will take a little bit of some finesse to try and make it look nice and pretty, I'm going to get the chopstick out of my pillowcase. This, now that I have it on the bottom, I'm gonna find it, and here it is. So now I have my pillowcase. Since I have finished my pillowcase, I'm now going to turn off my machine, and I'm going to grab my filling. So you can use any kind of filling you would like, and this is when I'm going to start taking chunks of my filling, and I'm going to get my opening that I left, my 2-inch opening, and I'm just going to start filling it. This will take some time, and the thicker that your pillow gets, it's easier to use the chopstick. But since my pillowcase is not yet full, I'm going to begin just with my fingers, and I'm just going to like shove the fluff into my 2-inch opening. And I'm going to do this until my pillow is almost full. Once your pillow is about halfway full, you're going to take your excess fabric, and you're going to make sure that the size of your excess fabric is not something that you can really use for anything else. I could use this for something else, like maybe a small bow, but I'm likely not going to. So to save waste, I'm going to put this into my pillow as part of my fluff. Once I have filled my pillow with my excess fabric, I'm then going to fill the rest of the pillow as full as I want to with more fill. I am going to fill it until I am happy with the density of the pillow, and once I'm done, we're going to stitch the pillow last little opening closed. Once my pillow is to the thickness and the density that I want, I'm then going to take a needle and thread that I have threaded, needle that I've threaded with thread, and I have tied at the bottom. So I have two, it looks like I have 2 threads, and it's tied at the bottom, but it's just 1 thread tied at the bottom. We're then going to stitch our hole up using our needle and thread. To do this, you want to make sure that your ends of your, so these would be your ends of your pillow, are tucked in, and you have your seam allowance still allowed, right? So you still have that inch of excess fabric inside, and we're going to put our needle through the end, and we're going to do a blanket stitch to stitch this together. All right, so we're going to go through one end of the fabric through the outside, the other side, and we're going to, before I get to the end of my thread, I'm going to find these in between both of these threads, and I am going to put my needle through these 2 threads, like so. So I have threaded my needle through my thread, and this is going to make sure that my thread doesn't get loose, okay? And I'm going to now go through the front and the bottom. You do not have to do a blanket stitch. Let's do, but for right now I will, because, so I'm going to go through one end and out the other. And I'm going to go back through the front end, out the other. All right. And you're going to do this until your pillow hole is stitched up and there is no more opening.
You can do this as neat as you would like. And notice how we only left about 2 inches open, so that it's almost hidden. It's not the majority of the pillow. And what I'm doing with my fingers right now is I'm kind of trying to straighten out the threads
as I'm getting closer to the end, I'm thinking about how much thread I have left and if I'm going to be able to knot it with the amount of thread that I have left. I do have quite a bit of thread left, so I shouldn't have any problem knotting my thread. So now that I've gone all the way to the end of my opening, I'm gonna go through, and I've finished all of my hole, and I'm going to make a loop. So I'm leaving this loop and I'm going to thread my needle through the loop, making a knot. I'm gonna do this a couple times to make sure that my thread is stitched. So I just went through that again. So now my thread is coming through the loop. I'm going to knot it. I'm gonna find some of my stitches that I've done that I just did. And I'm gonna go underneath that stitch. I'm gonna do one more knot just to be safe, because I don't want my thread to come undone and have fluff just be coming out. All right, so now I'm going to cut this excess piece of thread, and I'm also going to cut the little tail from the beginning. So I'm going to cut both of these. So now you have completed your pillow, and all of the ends are done. My pillow is looking just a little bit lumpy, and if your pillow is also looking a little bit lumpy, you can roll your pillow out, and the more that you massage the pillow, the more that you're able to control how your pillow looks. All right, thank you, and I hope that this helped you make a pillow. All right, have a great rest of your day. Bye.